The WNBA is not intervening to protect their cash cow, their only draw and their only star, and this is the end result. They promised that Caitlin Clark would revolutionize the league and hyped her up as the face of the future, but no one forewarned us that the league itself might be her biggest obstacle. It only took a few games for Caitlin Clark to go from the WNBA's prized poster child to public enemy number one on the court. Many WNBA fans are pointing out the referee issues, saying that the referees have literally turned their back. Caitlin Clark will be out for at least 2 weeks due to a quad injury, which has been revealed to be the result of cheating. Caitlin Clark is the reason for the interest in the Fever and the WNBA rookie. She was the target of multiple intentional fouls, not just from rival teams. This wasn't your typical rookie growing pains situation. Instead, it appeared much more dangerous and planned. Following every game, WNBA players' coaches are complaining about the referees, and they have demonstrated that the referees were supposed to ensure fairness, but instead they stood by like extras in a bad drama. What began as the occasional oversight quickly turned into an epidemic of no calls, letting blatant fouls fly while Clark hit the deck. Felines head coach Stephanie White was complaining about her team not receiving a whistle and not being respected, so they're not going to change anything. Game after game, Caitlin took hits, was shoved to the ground, and had to play through a sea of missed whistles. Following a quad strain, Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham went to the officials and tried to, ask for an explanation of what had just happened, but the official completely stonewalled them. It stopped looking like bad luck, it started looking intentional, and just when the conversation reached a fever pitch, new reports started to surface. Suddenly, fans started replaying every ignored foul, every body check that went unchecked, and every glance she gave the officials, pleading for a whistle that never came. She will be out for at least 2 weeks. It turns out that a large number of the league's referees were taken from, you guessed it, high school leagues, and they aren't even calling games based on their own judgment. Instead, the league depends on a backroom brain trust of general managers, coaches, and stakeholders who tell officials how physical they want games to be. This is a WNBA problem, and as more and more people watch this league, the officiating feels like you never really understand what it's going to be. They're not listening to their coaches, players, fans, or stakeholders, which is why I keep saying that nothing will change until the mindset and the people in charge of everything, the stakeholders, governance, and Caitlin Clark, are caught in the midst of this chaos where influence, ego, and economics collide. Now, after weeks of intensifying outrage, viral videos are spreading like wildfire, and even coaches and players are speaking out. The WNBA is finally feeling the heat. Should serve as a warning to the WNBA, Players Association, and team owners that all of this fanfare, interest, and newly discovered attention on the league could vanish in an instant. With rumors of lawsuits and referee bias circulating, the league's biggest asset could turn into its biggest liability if it doesn't take immediate action. And here's the big question: how far will they go to stop the same player they've been making money off of since day one? Caitlin Clark is being roughed up, but given her physical condition, I'm not surprised that she has already sustained an injury 2 weeks into the season. When Caitlin Clark entered the WNBA, everyone anticipated fireworks, not just from her performance, but also from the excitement she would create for a league in dire need of a miracle. 2024 was a year of unprecedented growth in WNBA viewership, largely due to Caitlin Clark, who took the basketball world by storm following an all-time college career in which she appeared in 18 consecutive games. Caitlin Clark has never been one to back down. Back at Iowa, she rewrote the record books, attracted millions of fans, and transformed women's hoops into primetime television. She never missed any of the Indiana Fever's 39 games against the Iowa Hawkeyes, and for a brief while, everything was going well. Attendance soared and TV ratings shattered records, but rather than the league showing up, Clark was greeted with rudeness and antagonism from the start by Kane Clark, who was in charge of 5% of the WNBA's total revenue from last season's merchandising. Ticket sales and television money came from Caitlin Clark's absence, which lasted for at least 2 weeks. However, can the WNBA continue to draw large crowds to arenas without ratings? From the first time she took the court as a professional, every matchup felt like a gauntlet. The defenders weren't just protecting her, they were bodying her as if it were a UFC fight night. She received full court pressure, off-ball hacks, and floor contact that belonged in a rugby match, not a basketball game. The referees were nowhere to be seen, and Clark repeatedly had to just grit her teeth and persevere through contact that would have earned a whistle for any other elite player. The world was watching how bad the cause was, and they didn't care at all. They were going to do whatever it took to get rid of the fever, and I'm here to tell you that's exactly what happened, bro. They have a plan against Caitlin Clark, and the league was saying the same old tired line, she just needs to adjust. But why is it always on her to change? And why is Caitlin Clark the only star who is told to toughen up while everyone else is protected like crown jewel? Then came the injury, and after logging monster minutes in game after game, often up to 35 minutes a night, she's injured. Said that the reason people are complaining is because they have never watched the WNBA before, and these are just new fans who don't understand. But there is obviously a problem. It wasn't just a setback, it was a gut punch to the Indiana Fever and a huge loss for the entire W. For many fans, it didn't feel like a freak accident. Rather, it felt like the cost of neglect, the culmination of a season's worth of unbridled aggression, and a league that failed to care for the only player who was keeping the lights on. Clark will be out for at least 2 weeks due to a left quadricep strain. This wasn't an inevitable turn of events. Rather, it was a catastrophe that could have been prevented. What hurt even more was the league's silence about the abuse Caitlin Clark had been subjected to. They made no statements or apologized. They just added her name to the list of injured players. However, this wasn't just any name. She was the face of the WNBA's new era, and the system that was supposed to protect her chose to ignore her. And by that I mean that you have someone who is clearly the most well-known basketball player on the planet. You have someone who, in my opinion, is among the top 5 most well-known athletes in the United States of America. All right, you have this athlete in a league that no one has been watching, who has never made money, and your system is broken against that team. Even those on the court alluded to the problem, as Kelsey Mitchell, Clark's own teammate, quietly urged her to pay attention to her body's warning. Even if there is an injury, hopefully it's just a little nagging thing. And again, take care of your body and experience. I think recovery is everything, and if you're in tune with your body, you know what you need. This is Caitlin. Looking deeper into the WNBA's officiating reveals a troubling reality. The referees aren't just green, they're underqualified. Some have jumped from high school courts straight into the league. This lack of experience is especially noticeable when it comes to managing the league's most talked about player, Caitlin Clark. For you guys, they do not discuss it here, so I don't want us to personally attack some of these referees. I believe they are doing their job if they are hiring referees who essentially had no experience. The WNBA is avoiding important developmental stages like college or the NBA league. These aren't seasoned professionals with years under their belts. They're frequently learning the ropes while officiating the most high-stakes games the league has ever seen. However, high school refereeing jobs and then a stint in the G League like these referees actually aren't, and I've confirmed to myself that not much will change, but the rabbit hole goes deep. These officials aren't making decisions based only on their judgment. Behind the scenes, there is a competition committee that dictates how games should be officiated. This committee is made up of coaches, general managers, and stakeholders, who aren't impartial entities, but rather people with a stake in particular results. This isn't just conjecture. League insiders have confirmed it in interviews, are being told what level of physicality to allow, which fouls to prioritize, and what style of play fits the league's branding, rather than what's fit. A committee of stakeholders, including coaches, governors, and general managers, decides what kind of basketball they want to allow, and the referees are abiding by that law. Caitlin Clark's presence upsets this meticulously maintained status quo by introducing a new tempo, garnering unprecedented media attention, and bringing a spotlight that makes the current system uneasy. Her dynamic style clashes with the rougher, slower, more. It took us 4 games this season before Stephanie White said, "I've had enough. I thought she was fouled, but I think it's pretty egregious what's been happening to us the last few games." Contact that would have triggered immediate whistles in the NBA or even college games is dismissed. No calls, no justice, just silence. When she asks the officials for explanations, they are uninterested. The committee appears to favor physical games. This isn't paranoia, the bias is systematic. Look at what's happening right now. A WNBA referee is ignoring Caitlin Clark and having a fever. Oh my God, he's literally got his back turned. This is terrible. Coach Stephanie White tried to challenge one such incident during a crucial game, but an obscure rule prevented her because she didn't have a full timeout, just a reset. The officials stayed safe, but Clark did. This type of complicated rule enforcement doesn't just cost games. It's disappointing because it's not about individual mistakes. Rather, it's about a flawed structure where referees answer to hidden interests rather than the game's principles or fairness. Caitlin Clark is being targeted not just by defenders, but also by a system that is desperate to control the narrative rather than protect its most valuable asset. I thought you were fouled. You know, I think it's pretty egregious what's been happening to us the last few games. I might be able to understand it if we were just chucking threes. The league may try to minimize the officiating crisis, but the backlash is growing. Players, coaches, and analysts around the country are publicly criticizing the officiating, with Caitlin Clark at the center. This isn't about seeking favoritism, rather it's about demanding fairness in that the only player who can sell tickets is possibly out for an extended period of time. What the hell are you going to do now? The more that becomes apparent, the more obvious it becomes. One of the most talked about moments happened during the Fever versus Liberty matchup. With the game hanging in the balance, Clark drove to the basket and was clearly fouled by Natasha Cloud. The contact was so obvious that replays from every angle confirmed it, but there was no whistle, no call, and I understand the frustration that I believe comes most with officiating, the inconsistencies of officiating. But listen folks, start demanding accountability when referees consistently ignore blatant fouls on a star who attracts record-breaking attention. Okay, so when that foul occurred, CBS said she has a challenge left. However, she was unable to use it, and Stephanie White was unable to contest the foul call on Lexi Hull, the one that resulted in Sabrina Ionescu's game-winning free throws, because she was without a timeout. The problem with that is that it would have been nice if the CBS announcers hadn't even mentioned the challenge. Clark and her teammates immediately confronted the officials for an explanation, but they didn't provide one, so it sent a clear message not to. The whistle doesn't blow the same way for everyone, and this wasn't an isolated incident. Earlier, Coach Stephanie White attempted to challenge a questionable foul on Lexi Hull, but league rules prevented her from doing so because there wasn't a full timeout. Fans who weren't aware of the rule assumed White had erred, but in reality a system meant to protect officials from scrutiny had her hands tied. If it's not just one team, there is obviously a problem. By the way, it's not just the Indiana Fever. Brittany Griner left a sideline interview to go yell at the referees, leaving the players vulnerable while the officials were protected by technicalities. The frustration has now spread outside of Indiana, as Brittany Griner stopped a live halftime interview to express her disapproval of the referees on national television. Other coaches have called the officiating disrespectful during press conferences after games. These complaints aren't just emotional outbursts, they're strategic critique. Players and coaches are pointing out that the rules aren't being applied consistently, and that this inconsistency is causing the game's rhythm. When Caitlin Clark takes the court, the rules seem to change. She faces more aggressive challenges and is officiated differently. When she persists, the officials ignore the toll until her body gives out. I did notice in the Liberty game that Caitlin Clark's shots were all very short, which showed that she wasn't getting off and that she was having a difficult time. The WNBA seems unresponsive, dismissing the criticism as growing pains from new fans unfamiliar with the league's physical style, but that just doesn't hold water. Making those three-pointers and having a lot of explosiveness from those three-point shots does come from your leg. Now that she is sidelined with a quad strain, she represents a league controversy that won't go away. Those who are speaking out aren't just defending Clark, they're exposing a culture that rewards silence and penalizes excellence. Caitlin Clark never asked for special treatment. She sought the standard that every player deserves, but the more she performs, the more she faces opposition. Not only from opponents, but also from the very system that is supposed to protect her. The backlash isn't decreasing, rather it is getting worse because the WNBA had a fantastic opportunity to reshape its future around a once-in-a-generation talent. Caitlin Clark didn't just join the league, She electrified it. She filled arenas, broke viewership records, and attracted a new wave of fans. The league underestimated a powerful force who had appeared in 18 consecutive games between her career at Iowa and her time with the Indiana Beaver, and 39 games with the Iowa Hawkeyes. She never missed one. Clearly, Caitlin is carrying a lot on her shoulders. The fans are watching everything. They saw her slam to the ground without any recourse. They saw the referees gather and then leave. They saw the scoreboard shift, not because the superior team won, but because someone in stripes decided to look away. But instead of rising with her, the league seems to be bucking under the pressure, clinging to antiquated power structures, while ignoring an undeniable truth. These fans aren't just angry, they're mobilizing. Legal pressures are growing. Media outlets are digging deeper, and conversations that once the WNBA's accountability system has been closed circuit for too long, with referees reporting to committees that answer to stakeholders and no one accountable to the public. However, at the same time, the Fever were on the wrong end of some whistles. This seemed to be the case in this game, and has apparently been that way for much of the season. It's a recurring theme where a level of physicality is allowed against them and they're not allowed to reciprocate on the other end. This is especially true for Caitlin Clark. This isn't about favoritism, it's about maintaining the integrity of the game, because what's happening to Caitlin Clark sends a message to every aspiring star and every young girl watching from the stands. Even if you break records or make history. The circuit has been disrupted by the attention Clark brought with her. She didn't seek controversy, and she didn't aim to be the face of a movement. But when the whistles fell silent and the elbows kept coming, the league put her in that role. Lawsuits could be the first step because this problem isn't going away. Caitlin Clark's fans won't let it, the media won't let it, and the truth is already out. The only question is whether the league will take action before it's too late. History shows that the system might still punish you for shining too brightly. That's not just unfair, it's unsustainable. A league that doesn't protect its stars risks losing them one injury, one controversy, one unacknowledged foul at a time. Click the video on the screen to show your support by leaving a late comment, protecting the CC underneath, liking, subscribing, and turning on all notifications so you never miss anything, and we'll see you at the follow.